Joining us now, the author of the book, Electoral Dysfunction, a survival manual for American voters, Victoria Bassetti. Victoria's book was turned into a documentary that will air on PBS next week.
Donna, you did great. That was awesome.
Victoria, thank you for joining us. Now, this has nothing to do with a 4-hour problem. This is a bigger problem. Basically, 51 million American voters are not registered. That's about 1 in 4 adults. That doesn't account for the registered voters that don't vote. What the heck's going on here?
We have one of the lowest participation rates of any industrialized nation in the world at this stage of the game. In the last election, 2008, maybe about 62% of the voting eligible population, voting age eligible population in the United States voted. Who knows if we're going to reach that mark this time around. But basically, we've got a dysfunctional election system with 13,000 election administration systems scattered throughout the United States, scattershot registration rules, an incredibly intense and difficult partisan system that really turns off a lot of voters pretty regularly.
So what happened after 2000? We heard after the 2000 recount, we're going to have a nationalized system. We're going to all work together. It's going to be coordinated. Nothing happened. What happened? Why?
Well, we threw almost $3 billion at voting administration, upgraded the machines, tried to impose new rules and regulations, but in the end, kind of inertia took over, and consequently, we've still got, bad machines scattered throughout the United States. We've still got sometimes incoherent rules. We've got poor voter registration systems. It's a little bit of a mess.
So what you're saying is, in 2012, Pat Buchanan is still going to carry Palm Beach County.
It turns out that might happen.
Fantastic.
Well, I always thought Pat should have carried Palm Beach.
He should have.
So it made sense to me.
We love
how does early voting change the game here? There's obviously a larger window to get people to vote. Doesn't change necessarily the registration, but people can now, if they have to work on a Tuesday, for instance, they can vote on their own time. So does that change things?
Yeah, that's been absolutely one of the big changes since 2000 has been the steady increase in the use of early voting or no fault or no excuse absentee voting since 2000. I think the estimates are that as much as 30% of the votes this time are going to be cast through early or absentee voting. Definitely, when you make voting easier, more people vote. But that's not the only problem that we have.
Well, so Australia has compulsory voting. We're not going to have that in the United States. What is
compulsory voting? What, do you kick down your door?
No, you get fined if you don't vote in Australia.
Really?
And they have a 90% plus participation.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
What could we do as a reform? Is it like making the election day a federal holiday? Is that possible?
Sure, that would be one thing, or making early voting, expanding it to beyond the states where it is, making absentee voting a little easier. I think if there were 3 things that I could do, the first thing I would do is I would reform our voter registration system, which is convoluted and outdated. So I would make it a lot easier for people to register to vote. I would do a system like Canada has, where they actually the government affirmatively goes through and builds lists of eligible voters. I would have election day registration, which is something that California recently initiated. It'll be in effect probably around 2015 in California. And they're coupling it with a sophisticated voter registration system. And most importantly, I would try to take some of the partisanship out of the administration of elections. We've got 2...
Really?
Seems like an oxymoron.
Yeah, we've got secretaries of state who are Republicans or Democrats running the very election system that they're elected under. And it seems to me we might be able to introduce bipartisanship or nonpartisanship into the simple administration of elections. That would take a lot of the problems out of it right now, and it would definitely decrease the accusations that election administrators are consciously manipulating the system for partisan advantage, claims that you've heard exploding over the course of the last election, particularly in Ohio.
Donnie.
What do we do in the way of education? I mean, at the end of the day, so many voters, don't know how. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, it sounds like a crazy thing, but...
Yeah, several organizations have got great efforts every year to kind of increase civics education and voter awareness and voter education. And I think every citizen should take a look at whether or not their state allows pre-registration of people who are about to turn 18 and encourages that pre-registration in the schools. And then there's every September there's Constitution Day, where a lot of organizations attempt to educate kids. So, but you're absolutely right.
One other quick thing. How much does the Electoral College keep people from voting? I'm a New Yorker. my vote doesn't matter. To me, that's the big elephant in the room at the end of the day.
Yeah, there are definitely studies that seem to indicate that in states where the Electoral College impacts the amount of campaigning that goes on in the state, so that is the solid states, you know, California, New York, Texas, that voter turnout declines anywhere from 2 to 4% because we're not a competitive state in the presidential election. So it definitely, there's a cluster of factors and things that depress voter turnout every year, not just the Electoral College, but that's one of them.
All right, Victoria, thank you so much. The book is Electoral Dysfunction, a survival manual for American voters. And the documentary is going to be airing on PBS next Tuesday, October 30th. And will also be available to download on iTunes. You're on all platforms.
And if it lasts more than 4 hours, see your doctor.
There you go. Oh, whatever.